warm this morning. Come take a walk with me. It's very warm. Even though there's snow on the ground. Feels like it's maybe 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And look at the trail here. Got very washed out last night. Lots of rains, which my understanding is there's been quite a drought this fall coming into the winter. How are you this morning? You doing well? Someone had asked me yesterday if I could go ahead and make an ASMR video. And I figured, since I take my morning walks here and my afternoon walks here, I could reserve at least one for you. So, welcome to the woods. Come take a walk with me. As I said, you never know what you'll see. You never know what will happen. And for those who have not seen snow on the ground, you get a good chance today. It's just a light dusting. Not much more. This may not look like an incline, but it is. So I start to breathe through the nose. Since I'm doing aerobic activities, I'm breathing out of the mouth, which allows more carbon dioxide to escape. As I breathe in through the nose, I feel the brisk, sharp, cold air come in through the nostrils. It's a beautiful sensation, though it may seem alarming at first. Getting used to the cold, I find it very invigorating. Not only that, you see all these trees, young and old. They're all connected to the earth, obviously. Just like us, except this is their permanent stay. It's whatever they make of it. And as they reach into the depths of this earth, look at that one, reminds me of an elephant's foot. What does it remind you of? Anything in particular? As these trees make their way into the ground through their root system, so you can see some of them are felled here. That's how you describe a tree that's been cut down, as a felled tree. F-E-L-L-E-D. Some of these elders have reached way down deep into the earth, spread their root systems far and wide, and in doing that, they allow the negatively charged earth to send up its negative ions, electrons, into the atmosphere. And that's not the only thing they let out. They let out beautiful doses of fresh oxygen And they're just waiting for someone or some creature to come by and take a nice exhale of carbon dioxide, oxygen, and nitrogen, which makes up most of our breath. Nitrogen actually is most of our breathing. However, when we exhale on the out-breath, we let out more carbon dioxide than we let in. And when we take in the in-breath, we take in and absorb more oxygen than carbon dioxide. And once we have that balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide, and if you're at home right now, comfortably meditating or perhaps preparing yourself for sleep, you may find just the breathing through the nose invites an incredible state of calm. And there's a reason for that. It's because when you breathe through your nose, entirely in and entirely out, it sends a signal to the brain, and the pineal gland and pituitary glands start to work in your favor. If it's nighttime for you, melatonin is produced by the pineal gland, and that triggers a number of sequences for you to start to sleep. It acts as a sleep aid, as a catalyst for dreams. If you're like me, and it's still early yet, perhaps first thing in the morning, or a little later, that oxygen and carbon dioxide balance, taken in through the nose exclusively, makes good use of that nitrogen, creates something called nitric oxide, a sort of degradation of the oxygen and an activation of nitrogen in such a way that a bunch of endorphins start to get released just from nasal breathing. This is why alternative nostril, I always say that, not all the time, but alternative nostril breathing, since we only have one nose, helps to regulate your mood, balance the frequency activity between the hemispheres of the brain, and produce a blissful contact with euphoria. Let's take the right trail today, shall we? Come take a walk with me. I'm familiar with these trails. I've been walking them and hiking them for about 3 years now, off and on. More on than off. That's a little pun. So just listen to the sounds of nature. It's not so much a crunch of my foot step that you hear. It's more of a slushy sound today. Today is a slushy sound. Can you hear the slush? Welcome to New England. It's quite a beautiful place, isn't it? You can look around and see how secluded and beautiful this place is. You can only imagine how much oxygen is being produced by these mammoth trees that just seem to extend on like tendrils. If you could turn it upside down, it would almost look like your lungs, wouldn't it? How interesting that they're producing exactly what the lungs need, isn't it? I think so. Well, there's a deer. Looks like a doe. You can see its white tail running far away in the distance. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. They're fast. Very fast. And this is hunting season. So that's as far as that story goes. Comes the sirens. Whenever the sirens go by, I always pray that whomever is in need receive the care that they require so that they can be peaceful and healthy at best. Here's a little bench covered in snow. That would be a slushy place to sit, wouldn't it? Slushy. So yeah, these trees are releasing all this beautiful oxygen. But more than that, I would argue, almost more, is the release of all of these negative ions, these electrons, sending out all the release of negative charges. And you know, we, as human, are positively charged. We are positively charged life forms. What does that mean? Well, it means on the surface of our skin, it's positively charged and it's porous, which means it has little holes for entry. Don't be alarmed. The skin is the largest organ of the body, and it is a form of interface between our external world and our internal world, which is our organ system, our nervous system, the endocrine system, which has to do with hormone production and release, and the brain, this amazing system of the mind and all its neuroplasticity. This is a tricky place to walk sometimes, so rather than hamming it up with you, my friends, I'll just walk it with my faithful walking stick. My faithful walking stick. Just taking it easy this morning. Some mornings, I walk very fast. All is to say, whether you're walking slowly or fast, keep walking. try not to find an excuse to do something else, no matter how rainy or snowy or slushy it may be. Keep that walk going. Keep your camera steady. You know what your camera is? It's a 3D camera. These eyes, did you know they're an extension of your brain? A lot of people think the eyes are separate, but there are cords, like cables, that connect to your computer and the power plug on your wall. Not quite like that, but I'm sure you can get the idea. And it's called the optic nerve. And it's a direct extension of the brain. This direct extension of the brain is the only part of the brain that has exposure to this external world. And how interesting that we call that which lets in the light in a camera the exposure. Some would argue and say, hey, that's the aperture. Well, the aperture is how open that exposure is to the light. And so if your eyes are open, they're exposed to the light. And that light comes in and you perceive it through electrical signals in the brain. Those electrical signals start firing and wiring, as Dr. Joe Dispenza would say. He coined the term firing and wiring. I think of it like roots of these trees extending into the great unknown underground. The brain, like a bulb of a tulip flower, or perhaps a bulb of onion or garlic, starts to extend its reach and seek and find new pathways for personal expression. And while all this is happening in this electric world that's the brain within, you have another system. One of three systems that are absolutely connected and vital. And that second system is magnetic. Can you guess what it is? It's where all your feelings come from. It sets your rhythm of life to a beat. Can you guess now? That's right, your heart. And your heart is thousands of times more magnetic than your brain. In fact, it's like a lodestone. You know what a lodestone is? L-O-D-E. A lodestone carries with it a magnetic charge, and it's a permanent one. And if you were to introduce other magnets to the lodestone, that stone would charge them, make them strong again. And you can see that in experiments right here on YouTube. Some lodestones are very large, massive. Some are small, but they all carry the same properties in that way. So the heart is magnetic, the brain electric. So the brain works with light in that electricity is a result of resistance between the light and the dark, the positive and the negative, the active and the passive. In the heart, magnetic works with the same properties, either attracting or repelling. So perhaps you could guess this one. If you wanted to attract something into your life, and I mean really bring it in, what would you do with your heart? Would you close it? What do you think that would do with your magnetism? If you suddenly closed off your channels, it seems you would want to open your heart. And that would bring in a lot of things, wouldn't it? No matter how vulnerable, no matter how much of a risk it seemed you were taking in trusting and loving, caring for and serving all the life around you, including your own, from within. So the heart either repels or attracts. Depends on whether it's open or closed. Your mind is either choosing something by turning on the light or rejecting something by shutting it off. But I said there was a third component, didn't I? Has anyone had butterflies in their stomach before? Maybe that'll give you an idea of where this third element is, because it's a brain. And before I get ahead of myself, I think it's important to note that there are tens of thousands of neurons in the heart itself, fairly recently discovered, mind you, responsible for the collective pulse that is your heartbeat. And they make this sound in synchronistic rhythm all at once for your entire life, synchronistically in rhythm. And boy, oh boy, does it pump a lot of blood through your body every day. Hundreds and hundreds of liters of movement. So perhaps you've had before, I have to be careful here, it's very slushy. Perhaps you've had before that gut feeling. Have you ever had a gut feeling where your intuition tells you something and you seem to want to listen, or maybe not? That's where you know right from wrong. And that is only you. That has nothing to do with anyone else. Your decision as to what is right or wrong depends on your aperture, depends on your exposure to this world, depends on how open or closed your mind and heart is. And look at these little rabbit prints. Little rabbit prints. So depending on how open your heart is, and plastic or malleable your mind is, how flexible it is, this will determine quite easily how well you can feel this world in its truth. And you must trust your gut, for your gut is also a brain. Some call it the second brain. I would say it's pretty accurate because there are more neurons in the gut than there are in the heart. However, if the brain or the mind is responsible for electricity or electric impulses and neuroplasticity in the brain. And if the heart, excuse me, I have to cough. Excuse me. If the heart is responsible for magnetic attraction or repulsion, then what's the gut responsible for? Well, when you get that gut feeling, or you have those butterflies in your stomach, it seems to come from some sort of change in feeling. I mean, you're feeling all the time, but there's a change, and it's a notable change, isn't it? When you have those butterflies, or if you get pains in your stomach. So the release of hormones and hormone regulation, as well as digestion of not just your food, but of the experiences in your life, the pain remembrances, the joyous ones, all the same, recorded, in the gut. And out it goes, distributing itself throughout the body. And the gut is a very old brain. Of course, we are old as humans, made of 7 octillion atoms. So we're octillionaires when it comes to atomic structure staying together, while also giving a lot of space, mind you. Space between the atoms. Space for Adam and Eve. Space for polarity, active and passive. Space for light. Space for photons and electrons, gluons. Space for even the strange. Space for the mesons and the bosons. Space for the peaks and valleys, the highs and the lows, and the occasional balance between it all. Ideally, if you find it more than an occasional thing, that balance starts to release really good things. Remember when I was saying, breathe through the nose, brings balance. And when you have that balance, the body rewards you in turn. So it's an old brain, that brain in the gut. Very old brain. Not as old as the atoms in our body, which are, from what I believe, birthless, deathless, changeless, and immortal. You can split them. You can send them off. But you're not changing them, and you're not changing the intelligence that they carry. Just either making them more or less of the same in a local area. But you're not killing those atoms. No. And that's the lesson we learned, isn't it? So as to not keep splitting them in such a erroneous way. For we know not what we do. Oftentimes. We need that intuition to guide us, and that's an old system. Did you know, though now the world of science would have you believe, there are more than 3 categories of cells on this planet? Cellular structures. That looked like a coyote dookie. in truth, there are only really two forms of cells. One carries a nucleus, and the other doesn't. One is circular, and the other oblong and like the shape of a pill, like a supplement. One is eukaryotic, that carries the nucleus, and the other is prokaryotic. Before prokaryotes, they were archaic, as in archaea, as in older. That's a chickadee, a black-capped chickadee. That's the warning sign, or the warning call of the chickadee. Saying, stay away from my house. They're very communal, and they have direct calls with the tufted titmice. If you want to know what a tufted titmouse is, just go watch any old Disney film that has birds flying around. That was the archetype. It's got a little tuft, like a mohawk that pops up sometimes. Sometimes it's low and you don't see it. And they have these spotted eyes. They're like beads. That's a woodpecker chirping away up there. Probably taking advantage of the thaw by tapping on the trees and getting the grubs to come out to think that it's spring. Get a nice early morning snack. So the chickadees, the black-capped chickadees, very communal, very friendly, very curious. They interact with the tufted titmice and the woodpeckers to a certain extent as well, especially the smaller one called the nuthatch. And the nuthatches have characteristics with an elongated body that looks similar to the chickadee. It's because they all come from the same eukaryotic family. Did you know that? You know who else comes from the same eukaryotic family? That's right. You and me, and all these trees, all the leaves and the ferns, all the worms, and the birds and the bees, and all the fungus too. All the fungus that's growing on these trees, if you look carefully, you'll see them popping out and starting on their way. All part of the same family. And there seems to be a bit of a seniority involved. Whereas these mycelium, the fungi, the mushrooms, have been around the longest in our family, arguably, some form of them. They become our caretakers. When things aren't regulated, or when the idea of us breaking down occurs, they take over. Not to be invasive or challenging or difficult, but to be our custodians in a proper way. Slush. Very slushy. Very slushy. Here's a dark birch tree. One was felled not too long ago, which may still be on the trail upon our return, and we'll see as we come back. The fragrance that comes from this bark. Oh, that's a red-tailed hawk. Listen to that. A red-tailed hawk is up there somewhere. I know that call. The blue jays attempt to mimic it, which is very cute. I know I'm anthropomorphizing, but there's probably some survival instinct involved. But that was a red-tailed hawk somewhere up there. That looks like it could be the nest. Let's have a look. There it is. Did you hear that? Seems to be in flight, though I don't see it. What a majestic call that is. Beautiful, majestic call. Here's some more examples of turkey tail mushrooms. These are part of the eukaryotic family, so it means they have a nucleus. It means these are like the zits on the face of the body. That is the mycelium network that's all underground. And they're just decomposing material for repurposing. Of course, if you eat those mushrooms, the large majority provide nutrients, lots of protein, and in a survival situation, could be the difference between life and death. Not to be morbid, but it's true. Here's where there was a felled tree, and it was cut by someone taking care of these woods. And you can see here where the cut was, the formation of spores. Look at that. Those are mushrooms. Mycelium reaching a point of expression. And these are also part of our family of eukaryotes. Now, what about the prokaryotes? Well, they don't have a nucleus, thus they don't have the same level of what I would call awareness in the way that we do as humans. And their replication is different than the replication of eukaryotic cells, which form from stems. Perhaps you've heard of stem cells. Did you know that we come from one stem cell? It's a very special one. Oh, look, the sun's coming out. For just a short moment, I imagine, seeing there's overcast. Beautiful. There it is. See that? The passing of the clouds gives way for more shine to come through, or not. That's life in its peaks and valleys, to be expected. So don't get so caught up on the good or the bad. You can always determine how you wish to handle those things. But I wanted to share that light with you as I saw it coming through. Did you know we came from one cell? A eukaryotic stem cell? It's called a zygote. Z-Y-G-O-T-E. And the zygote is most special because it is the sum of your mother and father in union. And everyone has a mother and father in union in order for us to be alive, no matter whether it was grown in a lab or in vitro or through natural means of conception. Your mother supplies the egg, your father supplies the sperm in the traditional way. And those two elements unite to form something that is greater than the sum of its parts, the zygote. It's just one cell upon its formation, where there's a release of light. And upon that release of light, a spark of zinc, and the beginning of a brand new journey that is your earth life experience as consciousness made in the image and likeness of God, as human. And that is a beautiful gift that you receive right upon conception, so as not to ever snuff it out or call it anything but what it is, an embodiment of God, formed through the union of mother and father, and given a heartbeat, the breath, the organs, the nervous system, and the immune system. But before all of those things are formed, all of those beautiful gifts, you are given consciousness. That intelligence that is infinite, birthless, deathless, changeless, and immortal, is imbued into you upon conception. For without that intelligence, could the cells divide? Without that intelligence, could a blastocyst form that starts as cancerous and invasive and then turn into the placenta that creates a beautiful barrier between the hostile environments of this world and its incubated kingdom within? Could that be managed and done without this infinite intelligence? And the answer is resoundingly no. Consciousness exists upon the formation of the zygote, and even before then, in the journey of the sperm, and in the welcoming of the egg to only a select one, or perhaps few in some instances. We're talking about a very rare opportunity, a lottery-winning opportunity to unify with the cosmic egg and become one with the universe as human. And as much as those who would see themselves as empowered through the ending of such a wish-fulfilled gift, it is undeniably true that upon conception, consciousness in the form of an infinite intelligence that allows the formation of the body has been set in motion. And that consciousness does not die. For it is in all of us, is it not? Did we not all be formed in the same way from a single, beautiful, cosmic stem cell? the progenitor of all things? And were we not one in the beginning, only to find ourselves divided, separated and segregated, formed into different components, but at the same time, one body, heart, mind, and gut, and beyond, one body, all the same. And you can't deny that, lest you be fooled into believing you are separate from this intelligence that knows the means and the way to healing you, fulfilling you, and delivering you a wish-fulfilled life, the source of all creation resides within. I recall the first time I attempted to post this on YouTube, and someone in their error of judgment accused me of copyright infringement of their sounds. Please know, these are the sounds of the earth, a gift from God, of which I am a part, not separate, but one in being. Lest you be mistaken, please do not mistake me for what I am, is human. Within this stream, there are stones, leaves, sticks, amphibious creatures, all the same. The stream is one. And the source of the stream, also one. On some days, it flows strong, others seemingly not at all. Still, one. One with the infinite intelligence of God's manifold expression, unfolding before you right now. One. Take a few moments now and enjoy the sound of the running water and the gift of consciousness on this day. Scratchiness in my throat this morning that is not usual. Perhaps it's the way that I'm speaking so softly, whereas normally I am not cognizant of the volume of my speech. Perhaps it's dust from the woods, whatever it is. It's consciousness. So we all come from the same family, even the prokaryotes, the prokaryotes, tomato, tomato, potato, potato. We all come from the same source. Stardust. Subatomic formations coming and going at such a rapid pace that we would never perceive such things. All we see is a continuation of life experience. However, all is one. In our gut, we have the archaea, the oldest of our family. In fact, they're so old that they can't even live in an oxygenated world, whereas we can't live without it being oxygenated. How wild is that? I'd say that's pretty wild, wouldn't you? So where do you think the anoxic, which means starved of oxygen or without oxygen, where do you think the anoxic archaea exist in your body? Think it's in your lungs? Try again. Think it's in your mind? Could be just a figment. Think it's in your gut? I'd say that's a good guess. What's in the gut but a bunch of bile, acid, caustic elements that seem to have a way of maintaining a protective barrier from the rest of the body while living in its caustic state in harmony. And when I say caustic, I simply mean something that burns through something else. Now, to take care of that stomach lining, you have to have those archaea who want nothing to do with oxygen at all, for it kills them. To be in an aerobic environment, which is with oxygen. So before there was even photosynthesis, you know what photosynthesis is. It's when these beautiful leaves, back when they were green and filled with chlorophyll, sounds more like chlorophyll. Back when these leaves were fully green, back a few months ago, as these are deciduous trees, most of them, they are decidedly in hibernation. Deciduous, decidedly seasonal. So come spring, these deciduous trees will decide to sprout forth leaves again. And these leaves, whereas they're tiny shoots at first, don't look like much at all, become these beautiful leaves, from which you see a canopy of them on the ground right now. Perhaps you're wondering if this canopy of leaves serves a purpose. Well, it sure does. Keeps the animals warm on a rainy day, the little creatures, and provides all the nutrients gathered during its life cycle. You could tell the squirrel had a nice meal here, enjoying the view, taking it all in. Look at how green this moss is. If you were to look at this on a microscopic level, you would see little tiny water bears called tardigrades. Couldn't this be a field or a meadow here on the micro scale? I think so. I think this could be a sunny meadow, maybe with some ice. Just confirms as above, so below, like the lungs of these trees. Everything is connected, my friends. Make no mistake. These leaves, when they're green, spreading out their arms wide, some of them, such as the leaves from the sassafras, from which the original root beer is made, now banned because it's called carcinogenic, which I think is a great joke, considering what is approved for consumption in the United States. Without being too controversial, I think it's a great joke. The sassafras leaves look like 3-fingered hands, sometimes more, and they send off a beautiful citrus fragrance from the twigs and branches, whereas the roots, well, I'm sure you could guess now, they smell just like root beer. Root beer. And from these birch trees, you get birch beer. And the most incredible smell. It's one of a kind. Similar to maple syrup because, of course, it comes from sap. Just has a more spicier clove aroma, I would say. Sweet, of course, more than anything else. Sweet. But those green leaves, when they're extended in the spring and the summer, they take in the sun. And from that, they can convert that energy like a perfectly efficient solar panel. But a magic solar panel that takes the sun and turns it into glucose, which is sugar. And that glucose serves as the vital circulatory system of the tree, pulling water from the ground, converting sun into sugar, and living a wish-fulfilled life, stationary. That is a deciduous tree that has not had a meal in a few months. Right now, all of their energy is conserved in their root systems. That which they were born with that was most important for their proliferation and growth receives all the nutrients now. Though there is some food here in the woods, still, like this garlic plant. It smells like garlic when you pick it, and it's edible. There aren't just deciduous trees in this forest, or on the earth for that matter. Occasionally, you'll find an evergreen, like this white pine here. Oh, this may not be, actually. That looks like it could be spruce. Notice how the leaves are pointed. Very small, spiny, and green. Serves as a form of shelter for a number of animals in the winter. The sap from this tree, very sticky and viscous, can serve as an antibiotic, can even cauterize wounds if lit and applied as a pine pitch. At the same time, can make a great anti-inflammatory tea from the pine needles themselves. Here's a woodpecker on this tree here, peeking its head around, probably listening, thinking it's not being seen, but I got it. Can't tell if that's a male. It is. That's a red-headed woodpecker. I can see it now. They're communicating. They make that little chirp, chirp. And then the So think about the difference between the deciduous and the evergreen. What does this mean to you? Well, they're all part of the same family. One's much older than the other. Which one do you think is older? The deciduous tree or the pines? Well, perhaps you recall earlier in our conversation today, me mentioning an area in the brain that has to do with the secretion of melatonin. Perhaps you remember that? That's right, the pineal gland. Let me offer my opinion on that. To opine is to think. And the pineal gland, hello my friend, is evergreen. which means it decidedly never dies, never goes through its seasonal cycles, just keeps producing life year-round and stays vibrant. When used as a topical ointment, it heals, it adheres the skin together, it disinfects, it provides food from underneath the bark when you cut it. The Native Americans learned. It's a very sacred, powerful tree, just as you are a very sacred, powerful temple. You see and learn in these simple moments of walking the woods how there must be diversity while at the same time unity. All is one. And it is our personalized choice to decide what it is we wish to become. We opine. We offer opinion by selecting the thoughts that we wish to entertain amongst an infinite array of thoughts available to us. We opine. And as we do that, we learn that there is a currency for all of these life forms, one and the same. We all share the same earth and the same light and the same moon and the same air, and we also share the same currency. That currency is called adenosine triphosphate, otherwise known as ATP. And that ATP is what allows us to fire and wire things in the brain, feel the magnetic pulse of the earth through the heart, and trust our gut through our intuition in the stomach. All the while, we are spending ATP to opine. Now, perhaps you're wondering what it is that produces ATP. I sure would want to know. Well, there are two main ways of production of ATP. One is through breathing. So when we breathe in oxygen, ATP seems to be the happiest that it can be and produces a huge amount of energy, currency. So what happens when we're no longer in an aerobic environment and it becomes anaerobic or anoxic? Well, there's another way that ATP is formed, and that is through the phenomenon that is fermentation. And what fermentation is may sound strange to you, because when I used to think of fermentation, I used to think, oh, that has to do with beer and wine. But nothing to do with the human body. Well, remember when I said to you that when the trees receive this light for photosynthesis, it produces glucose? What if I were to tell you that the predominant element of your hemoglobin, or blood, is glucose? Seems we're not much different than trees after all, albeit mobile. Very similar in a lot of ways. Because why? We're all one, part of the same family. the same slushy family. So let's say I've been going for a while now, over an hour and 11 minutes, and it seems I might be running out of reserves provided by that beautiful oxygen in exchange and production of ATP as an optimized form of energy production. What happens when you use up those reserves? The body turns to your reserves. It goes to the stockpiles of energetic potential in your body. Do you know what those stockpiles are? Adipose tissue, also known as, or otherwise known as, fat tissue. Fat, the fat of the land. The body turns to that fat reserve and says, time to use up some of our stores. Time to go to the store and get some groceries. And it starts to break down these fat reserves without oxygen using fermentation within the body. The byproduct, carbon dioxide, alcohol, and one other thing, ATP. So the carbon dioxide, where does it go? It leaves from your breath. And the more oxygen you bring in, the more the aerobic exercise benefits you. The more carbon dioxide you let out, the easier the body can fall into balance again and stabilize. Counting on you to give it a good solid meal at that point in time, I bet. That post-workout meal, so important. So let's say you've run out of fat reserves. What then? Well then, the body has no choice but to turn to your muscle. And it will. It'll make you lean for the adenosine triphosphate. Some of you are probably wondering, well, what happens to that alcohol that's produced? Well, alcohol is known as a toxin, and the body wants it out as soon as possible. I should also say that while this happens, the pH of your body changes and becomes more acidic or acid-based. And acid is also a breeding ground for disease. So the body wants that out too. Perhaps you've noticed after a hard workout, you've got soreness in your muscles. And remember when I was talking about how your gut is filled with that acid? Or with bile? It's kept contained. This acid is all throughout your body, wherever you've been working those muscles the most. Starved of oxygen, turns to fermentation to produce ATP. Not nearly as efficient, mind you, as aerobic activity, or if there are steady reserves of glucose available to work with, can convert that right away with oxygen and give you tons of energy. But in this case, the energy works and forms in a different way. The byproducts are also different too. So the alcohol is taken out of your body right away. takes about an hour for an ounce of alcohol to completely be removed from your system. That tells you how much the body doesn't want it there. Not to say it's bad. Anything in moderation serves beneficially, including alcohol. It's a part of life, and it's a part of your energetic cycle. Now, let's say that fat wants to become more efficient. There's an American goldfinch here. It could be the one that I saved. I heard it once. Looks like this leaf is waving. Let's try to get it again. There it is. Yep, there's a goldfinch colony here, for sure. See how exciting it is here in the woods? Thank God we're outside. Thank the Lord for the gift of consciousness on this day. That's a felled tree. That was a tree that just fell. And the sun's coming out. This is a special place right here. Look at that sun. Wants to come through now. It's making its way. You can see there's a clearing. Clouds are moving fast now. Breaking news. So while the ATP produced through anaerobic fermentation is less efficient, the byproducts are different. Lactic acid is a byproduct, and it burns your muscles. And then your muscles need to go through tissue repair. This all requires what? You got it. Energy. ATP. So how do you recover from muscle sores and muscle tears? You introduce glucose to your body through food and fresh reserves of oxygen through mindful breathing. And the rest is managed by the miraculous consciousness that gives you life and has always given you life. Perhaps you see that now. That would be my wish on this day for you. To see the truth of your being, the truth of your existence as stardust. Not so slushy anymore, is it? Not like before. The sun just knows the way to give us this beautiful habitable zone. It just knows. It knows the means and the way. The most consistent thing in the sky, the most consistent thing in the day is the sun. Rises and sets, just as it always has, without fail. No wonder it's so curative. Along with all these beautiful negative ions, and I should have mentioned to you over at the stream before how beneficial it is to be around running water. Not just for the peaceful sound, but for the negative ions that are thrown up into the air when there are collisions between the stones of the electrons in the water. And it's alive. Masaru Emoto proved that. Scientists would say that's not true. Whatever it is, just be. That's all I ask. Just be. Be at ease, be at peace. The sun's out. It's been calling to us. I told you. It was just a matter of a few other movements before it showed its true colors. Nice steady incline here. You can see the sparkles of the droplets of water. Each are expression of God's manifold reality and beauty. Every little droplet. Hanging on. You can only imagine this serving as a beautiful home for our little creatures. Speaking of the leaves earlier, they provide a canopy. But beyond that, their entire seasonal life structure, collecting nutrients. And those nutrients are greater than what was here before. It accumulates to become something greater than the sum of its parts upon falling on the earth. The most brilliant form of fertilizer. Of course, these serve a purpose after their lifetime. How are we any different as human? It's worth a question to ask. Question's worth it. Here's one of the bigger inclines of the day. Once again, it doesn't look like much. It doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to have a definition. It doesn't have to have meaning. You just know it's here and it's beautiful. It's part of consciousness. There's nothing separate from consciousness. In order for it to exist, it must participate in the manifold expression. So perhaps you've noticed a theme here that is more of unity than of separation, more of continuation than ending, more of friendship and camaraderie than opposition and war and fighting. More of expansion than contraction, more of attraction than repulsion. More of love than hate. More of blue skies than obscured ones. There seems to be a common theme unfolding before us. Doesn't it? Doesn't it seem to be that way? Boy, I sure think so. I sure think so. Knowing this, my dear friends, if you know there's something that gives you fulfillment in a given day, leap for it. That's a little Junko. These are my buddies. They know I know them. I mean them no harm. They know. That one tried to hover for as long as possible to let me know, hi. They've known me for years. I've fed them for years. They know I walk through here, and I never bother a soul. We're friends. Yes, even the Canadian lynx that lives here and her budding family know that I mean them no harm, as do the coyotes and the deer, the turtles and the snakes. All the little creatures. Happy to be their guardian on this day, at least in thought, and feeling, and gut instinct. They know I mean them well. Psst, psst. Psst, psst, psst. I have a little song for them. That looks like a felled tree, doesn't it? Looks like it happened on its own means, too, and is about to serve as a beautiful home for those courageous enough to burrow through. Let's see how far this goes. Wow. I hear a chainsaw in the distance. Wow. Seems to have fallen right over this path. Just like the tree we heard fall. This is what it looks like. And this is a dark birch tree. And this is a branch. And let's smell it. Oh, it smells bright and sweet. It sure does. If I could only get it for you on camera. There it is. Bright and sweet indeed. These twigs would make a beautiful birch beer. And this tree is filled with petroleum potential. In other words, you can extract a crude form of petroleum from the birch. And that is the felled tree, right over the path. You can hear a chainsaw in the distance. Dangerous work. Gotta send prayers to those who do that work. You never know who could be spiking those trees in protest. These trees grow back quickly. In fact, there's so much growth, as you can see, that the trees need to be felled intentionally in these woods, for there to be a continuation of diversification, not just of tree type, but of animals as well. So they have places to live and burrow and set up shop for the winter months, which are cold and scarce when it comes to food and provisions. But we still have the running stream. This is a beautiful one here. New England forests hold amazing clues to the past. You just need to know how to read them. A little bit of knowledge can go a long way and help you see the forested landscape through a new perspective. Here are a couple of clues and how to interpret them to get you started. Stone walls. The forests in New England were once cleared for fields by European settlers. As forests were cleared, the settlers used the stones unearthed in the rocky soil to build walls, which served a variety of purposes, including marking property lines, demarcating fields, and creating enclosures for livestock. The walls you find in the woods today are evidence of this agricultural past. Clue number 2, wolf trees. Have you ever seen an old gnarled tree in the forest with spreading branches that looked significantly different from the other trees around it? If so, you've probably seen a wolf tree. When European settlers cleared land for pastures, they often left a few trees to provide shade, acorns, or nuts for farm animals or people. And some of these branches thrived when the tree grew in a field, but after the farms were abandoned, a thick forest grew up, shading out and killing the wolf tree's lower branches, and these trees are typically 150 years old and serve as homes for birds and small mammals. Some hidden clues in the forest. Gotta thank the wolf trees. Did you know that wolves are one of the rare species of eukaryotes in our lovely family of one that take care of their elders? They do. You see, when their parents become too old to hunt and keep up with the pack, wolves tend to offer a shelter in a cave or an alcove, and they go off to hunt the younger ones, and they bring back food for their elders, and they care for them. Wolves are amazing in that way. Quite amazing. So I think of the wolf tree, the elders that have been kept here and also provide shelter for the earth's creatures. So much to be learned in a given day, isn't there? And when I say to you, that as parents, if you are parents, forget about allowance for doing your chores, really. I mean this. Forget about allowance. If your children can recall these things to you, it shows that they have gained skill. So reward them, either by giving them access to even greater knowledge for greater reward, or give them compensation for this learning. It's more important than being compensated for running a routine, making your bed, doing your dishes and laundry, or whatever it is. Those are maintenance activities, and they're important. However, to compensate them for that is to teach them further indoctrination into do as you're told and you'll be rewarded. Instead, encourage your children to do what speaks to them intuitively and to pursue that with full force and determination to learn more. For that's how we learn, isn't it? Us as adults. Learned a lot on this day, maybe. Maybe you just had a refresher. Whatever it is, it's how we learn. And when we bring these things to the table and we show the world these things for knowledge and education and entertainment purposes, we are compensated, aren't we? In some way, whether it's with a like, a comment, a subscribe, a follow, a donation, or compensation from the source, that being YouTube. So become that tube. That's why YouTube was made in the beginning, for you to have a channel from which the source can connect a tube to send you due compensation for your services rendered. Isn't that how it should be always? Instead of following what everyone else is doing, thinking that that replication is the pinnacle of success in some illusory way. I pray that we do not get lost in such replication, for the examples that we have out there of truth are few and far between, wouldn't you say? I would. Just look at this channel the way it is now. That channel has been open for over a decade now, nearly 15 years. Very little coming back for what has been sent out. And when that happens, that has nothing to do with the algorithms, with the people viewing, the quantity of likes, comments, and subscribes. Has nothing to do with that. Has to do with what you believe to be your reality. That's why I tend not to care too much about recognition for such efforts. For I know the Lord is listening and providing me with the light of life in the now. This gift of consciousness that has been rendered for me to live another day far exceeds anything that could ever be given in remuneration for my services offered to you, the viewer. So that you don't feel pressured, so that you don't feel pushed, so that it doesn't feel inauthentic, but rather true to you, that this is meant for you and only you to receive on this day. Do that and we fall into the same camp as eukaryotic neighbors. Yes, we do. So remember, in order to think and use that electric mind, it requires currency. That currency is your life force, ATP. And in order to feel, you have to open that heart of yours while becoming magnetic. And in order to discern and decide what is right or wrong to you, you have to follow your gut. These are all brains. They all carry neurons and systems of their own. Yet, they are all one with the human body. Let's cross the bridge, albeit carefully. so as not to slip. So remember, when you think you are spending your currency on something, would you go out and, unbeknownst to anyone or anything, just haphazardly spend? That seems to be a rather unwise use of your resources. So when you entertain a thought, make it count, for it is a wish. All your entertained thoughts are wishes, and they will return to you in the form of a feeling that either opens your heart further or closes shop. That depends on what you decide is good or bad through your own intuition, your gut instinct. But it all stems from a thought in the mind of this infinite intelligence that is the giver and gift of your life and consciousness itself on this day. This is God, of which you are a part. Never separate, but a component of that. Lest you forget, simply return here whenever you need to be reminded of your truth as human. You are made in the image and likeness of this intelligence which seeks to listen to you, hear you, and feel it through with you, so that you may live, undoubtedly, a wish-fulfilled life. So until next time, my dear friends, keep wishing and wish well. Not just for yourself, but for others, your neighbors, your countrymen and women, your children, the meek, the poor, the vagabonds, and the lost. The creatures, the animals, the birds, and the critters. Keep wishing well. God bless you. And I'll see you on the flip side. Amen. It is done.